everybody. Welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Banter where we review every single Palme d'Or winner. And today we are talking about a very early film from the Cannes Film Festival. It is Torment from 1944, directed by Alf Sjöberg and written by Ingmar Bergman, one of Ingmar's first, I believe. This is a rather interesting film, a school drama that I'm excited to talk about. But I have an important update from our previous episode.
Breaking news! Yes, to Timo, our reporter in the field.
We have received the votes, and on election night, the two films going up against each other in the blue corner. Blue is the warmest color, and in the red color, Taste of Cherry. We received... Yeah. That actually worked out pretty well. We received a couple votes, and the verdict is Taste of Cherry is going to remain on top of Blue is the warmest color. And so we have a placement now at spot number 13 for Blue is the warmest color with a score of 6.4. Remember, that's what Taste of Cherry got also. And so thank you, dear audience, for hearing our clarion call and going to the polls because we needed it. And today, democracy lives on Backlot Banter.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right.
Because there was a vote.
There was.
Hey, that's all democracy demands at the end of the day.
The
Just
turnout
votes existing.
was high enough for us. Well,
two people.
Yes. Before we talk about what I would rather call an undemocratic society of the movie Torment, Abram, I do believe, has a featured comment from last time.
I do.
Featured comment.
I have a featured comment that actually follows up last week's featured comment. This is from the Cat Indeed who continues. Yeah, we do have a saga here.
Yes, okay.
Last time the Cat Indeed said, Timo, you better never have to present an animated film at the Oscars. And we didn't know why. So the Cat Indeed elaborates here.
Here we go.
It says, elaborate. In 2022, 3 of the ladies who played Disney princesses in the live-action remakes presented Best Animated Feature and joked about how kids watch animated movies over and over and the parents have to suffer through them, very much undermining the artistry of animated films. I don't blame the presenters, they were likely just reading off of a teleprompter, but it's still very disrespectful to animation, and many people complained about it at the time, including Phil Lord and Chris Miller. So Timo joking that animation is not cinema would make him a great candidate to present the best.
That is an insane cut. Insane cut.
Well, Phil Lord and Chris Miller are always complaining about something. And,
they're always standing up for animation and the people who make it.
And the workers' rights.
That's right. That's right. But that's good. I do remember that, actually. I do remember that. And yeah, that's just something that the Oscars show writers wrote, and these 3 actresses had to read off.
Poor taste.
Yeah.
I also just want to close the loop on one other thing. I'm not going to read the comment, but John Tor tried to answer my question about subtitles, but it was an insufficient answer, John Tor.
Oh.
I need to make this question explicit.
All right.
I want to know why, when you're watching a film in English, natively in English, that the subtitles don't always align with what is being spoken. That's what I'm talking about.
You will not accept human error as an answer?
No, because this is I'm not talking about the tracks of the movies that we watch illegally. I'm talking about the official subtitle tracks for big films on the 4K Blu-ray. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's all I want to know.
Okay.
I'll leave it to the audience for part 2. John, try again.
Internet scholars, help us out.
Try again. Yeah.
Tanner, would you do
It's funny because you're going to find a different answer on a case-by-case basis. Like, there is no one person behind the scenes orchestrating 0.01% of all subtitles for Blu-rays.
Tanner, what happens in this movie? Give us a little plot synopsis, and then we can dive into our analysis here.
In the film Torment? I'd be happy to recap the film Torment for you. So in the film Torment, I just like saying it. In the film
it's a
Torment,
normal word, Tanner. Torment.
No,
Torment.
Yeah, but torment is really torment.
Yeah, Torment.
All right. Okay. We got a wise guy over here.
That's what I'm saying. We're saying the same thing. In the film Torment, we follow a young student by the name of Jan Erik. This is a Swedish film, if you couldn't tell. And Jan Erik is taking his final exams at school. Him and his peers particularly are stressing about a Latin final. I'm sure that some people amongst this group can relate. But perhaps, hopefully not, to the instructor of said class, who they name Caligula. I'm not sure if we ever learn his actual name.
It says it on the cast list.
His name is Caligula in the cast list.
That's how we're going to refer to him.
That's how we will refer to him. Caligula is a real bastard of a teacher. and a real bastard of a man, as we come to find out in his personal life. As things,
He's ill.
He's ill, as he often says over and over. But after being sort of pleaded by the administration to maybe, hey, take it easy on your students a little bit, you're a real motherfucker. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And as we come to find out, a young woman, a shopkeeper that Jan Erik becomes romantically involved with, is also suffering from abuse under Caligula. But her abuse that she's experiencing is sort of psychological or perhaps even sexual in nature. And we kind of have to reckon with that. And as events would have it, she ends up dying from alcohol poisoning, and Jan Erik blames Caligula and doesn't pass his finals, and perhaps that's okay at the end of things. Perhaps he has grown nonetheless, and Caligula has sort of stayed the same with his hateful core, his hateful heart unto himself, destroying him.
Yeah.
Wow. Getting a little philosophical right at the
Philosophical.
beginning.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's a Bergman film, so you almost have to.
Yeah, true. What did you guys think
Time
of
for
it?
philosophy on to Quest for the Bestest.
I liked Torment. I think it's a solid, a good film here. I think the performances and the structure of the story as a whole is quite enrapturing. I think this is a classic sort of like student-teacher adversarial relationship that we've seen with much more popular, much more well-known, much more modern films. Like I couldn't help but think of Whiplash watching this one.
Oh, sure.
Or
the Holdovers, maybe.
Yeah, the Holdover. Well, the Holdovers is kind of like the opposite of Torment.
I guess they come to like each other.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. This is really about.
That's if we were doing like a D&D alignment chart. That's more in the
the lawful good.
That's in the good category.
Anyway, but I think what's really interesting about Torment is that the storyline that Jan Erik goes on of not sort of fitting into the alignment of the typical societal good education, but sort of like maturing on his own outside of that straightforward system that both his teachers and also his parents sort of want him to travel down, and he sort of learns life lessons on his own, which I find quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tim, what do you think?
I thought it was kind of a sad movie. I was saddened by it a lot of the times. And I enjoyed it. I think it's kind of middle of the road for me. Because I think that there are a lot of interesting thematic elements, and I agree with you, Tanner. The characters are pretty interesting, and this student-teacher relationship was very interesting to see play out. And I was questioning, where are we going to go now? What happens next? There's many folds and twists throughout the plot that kind of heighten our tension and complicate the dramatic scenario. And so it's like, okay, I'm curious to see what happens next. And I think the ending is still just puzzling to me in what exactly we're getting at. I think that the steps that we've taken, like theme wise, of independence, or as well as the abuse and a helpful character coming in, and where Jan Erik's like love starts, and where his kind of just like willingness to be helpful is also there. And so I thought it was interesting. I wasn't particularly enraptured by it, but it was good, I would say.
Sure.
Yeah. I like this movie quite a bit. I can't say we watched it 2 days ago now.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that I think carries you very strongly through its runtime, and I think maintains good interest throughout. Primarily because I think the three core performances are all spectacular. I especially think the actor portraying Caligula is really, really killing it. And the actress playing Bertha is also doing an amazing job. And Jan Erik is, I think, on a step below those two, but he's still very compelling.
Mhm.
And I also was very surprised by how much I enjoyed the production design and the lighting and the cinematography. The camera's doing all these interesting moves, and they have these really interesting shots of sort of MC Escher-esque big staircases in this college that they're at, and it creates a very interesting atmosphere. Very stark black and white photography. So it was a treat to look at. I was really enjoying the performances, and it's a tried and true classic story of pushing back against an oppressor. And so I don't think it does anything so special that I would recommend watch Torment over any other movie that has come out since, or maybe some before that do a similar thing. But it's like, yeah, this is maybe kind of a kind of a hidden gem of like 40 Swedish cinema. Not saying I know too much about that, but I was surprised, but like, oh, actually, this is pretty good. I would tell someone to go watch Torment, and they would have plenty of a good time. I mean, maybe they'd be a little sad because abuse and all that, but,
death and so on and so forth.
But it's a good movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I really like what you were mentioning earlier, Tucker, about the actual school building. I think that's really great. The way we often frame the staircases you're talking about in an intriguing way that keeps people feeling quite small and almost trapped in this very labyrinthine situation is quite great, because I think the film operates in this way to sort of illustrate the imprisonment that our students are in, and they literally referred to the school as a prison at one point, I believe. And I find
wouldn't put it past them.
I find Caligula to be quite a compelling character, and the scene wherein he is sort of really grilling the students on their Latin is quite remarkable, and how Caligula sort of, I think, captivates the audience's attention as he is suppressing any sort of good feeling in that room from the students.
Yeah,
I think my problem ultimately with the movie is I just don't really know if Jan's character does much for me. I don't know if I really... It's not necessarily about connecting to him, but maybe about caring about him beyond sort of the situation he's in.
Yeah. I think the other two characters are much more compelling.
Yeah, so I think I find myself really intrigued by the premise. I agree with the production points, and I think Caligula is really compelling too. But on the whole, I don't know if it really amounted to a ton for me.
Yeah, I think
what's Timo's thoughts?
Oh, didn't he already?
I
already asked him.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He said he made him sad. That's right.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
I did want to continue on the point of the school, because frankly, that is the thing that stuck with me most in terms of surprising me. The production design of this school and the way that they reuse a couple of locations to, I think, great effect are very, very cool. There is the big staircase, as we mentioned, but there's this big wraparound sort of exposed hallway, exposed to like the big open atrium where the staircase is, and they're always using these really far away shots that frame the railing of this open hallway very interestingly. There's this room that might be like a teacher's lounge of some sort, where there's a bunch of maps hanging that are rolled up.
I think that's like sort of like the headmaster's or like office / map storage room.
Yeah, slash cartography storage. Which is a very interesting location that is used in terms of the physicality of the props with great effect. And then also Caligula's classroom feels very different and kind of imposing, because the windows are higher up than like in my mind they should be. And there's these big, deep window sills that are like 3 feet deep. And it gives it this like boxy, oppressive feeling that of course it contributes to the mood, because the characters are basically never happy when they're in that room. And so I really do want to commend the production design or probably location scouting of finding this college, and these rooms are like always framed very interestingly, always have a very distinct sense of place, because it can be very, very easy. And it certainly helps that we're not from this time period, we're not from this country, so we're not familiar with that style of school building design. But it can be very easy for a school to feel very, very monotone and very much backgrounded. And you get in lots of American movies, like the fake the fake football team banners and stuff like that. It can feel very one note, but this feels very distinct and very atmospherically dense.
I want to note the power of the cinematography and the lighting in this film to really like accentuate, I think, the kind of darkness of the space. It's like super high key lighting. I found myself being honestly confused about like whether we're in like night or day a lot of times, which I don't really think is a big detriment, because it's just so dark and shadowy and intense inside the school building. And it's less so in other locations, like Jan Erik's parents' house is pretty much kind of evenly softly lit. But just the ways that, I mean, on backgrounds, you get like the reflections of like the light coming through a window that's having, the rain pouring down on it and is creating a cool pattern in the background that's reflective of the characters. And there were a number of shots in this film that I actually was like, oh, yeah, that's very cool. So you reminded me, Tucker, that I did really appreciate the cinematography. And while I'm at it, the sound design ain't too bad either, because these very large and like echoey, very big spaces that we can. I think you see them and you can already hear how they sound. Like all of us kind of already know what that space is, and the replication of that was well done in this film. From 44, like, okay, great, awesome.
The sound design is good, but I don't think the sound editing is very good because there's a lot of very obvious ADR, and also the sound like cuts out in certain moments, at least on the Criterion Channel copy that we were watching, which presumably is the best copy of. Like,
I watched it on
there were
Criterion
moments where
Channel
someone was
too,
talking and it went, and it just cut out, and someone's like voice cut out between the shots.
That's fair, but I also don't know if this is something that's being emphasized in sort of the restoration offices and stuff like that. Anyway, I wanted to sort of put everything that you guys were talking about under the tent of the direction as well. I think the direction has a lot to do with what we're complimenting here. From Alf Sjoberg, as well as assistant director and writer Ingmar Bergman, who really go out of their way to emphasize a lot of the atmospheric stuff that you're talking about with the camera placement. So as I understand it, in looking into some of this, Bergman himself had a lot of hand in the look and feel and the direction of this movie as a whole. He's far more hands-on than perhaps your average assistant director, particularly of the 1940s, might be. So one thing that I really noticed, and it emphasizes the look and the feel of this school building, which is basically like a cathedral-looking place, is the camera placement and how low we often are, especially in those classroom moments. And
like between the desks.
Exactly. We are basically cowering from Caligula, much like his students are. Even in the conversation between Caligula and the headmaster, we're like cowering in the corner of this room, sort of panning back and forth. Yeah. So that's very deliberate and very effective as well. A very effective sort of visual choice to sort of put the audience in a particular mind space, where Caligula isn't a physically imposing person. He's quite weedy, quite weaselly, but there's just something about him that, from the performance of the other actors in a scene and the direction of these scenes, makes you sort of think fearfully of him as well.
Who played Caligula?
He is portrayed by Stig Jarl.
Well, I think that his performance is really what makes what you were saying, Tanner, work, because we get a lot of moments where he's framed in a very meek way. We especially towards the end of the film, when he's sort of coming hat in hand to try to apologize to Jan, he seems not only weaselly but just sort of effete. And so I think that the actor's ability to not only capture a physical performance that can sort of be very weak in a lot of ways, but then be booming and oppressive in his line delivery and in his body language when he needs to be, I think is the sign of a very good and multifaceted performance. And it also, as we've been saying, the success of painting Caligula as a villain, particularly in Bertha's apartment, is very much attributable to the editing and the lighting as well. There's a moment when you see his shadow, and it's very disorientingly framed. It's a beautiful shot, but it's edited in a way that you're caught off guard. You kind of, I think, know at this point in the narrative that Caligula is the one tormenting her. Of course. But the way that I think we get that reveal and we see him kind of in the doorway, it's very effectively done, and I think accentuates it's already a very good performance.
Yeah, totally. And it's the ways in which his like neurotic, psychotic performance swings between all of these extremes that makes him a very unnerving and intimidating character, because you always know that even if he is being quiet in a scene or acting meek in a scene, there's this anger and energy bubbling beneath the surface. And especially in the classroom scenes where he'll start off the classes that we see like pretty strict and straightforward, but not like aggressive, and then something will happen, someone will stumble a line, they didn't do their homework right, and he pulls out this like pointer thing that he has that he sensibly uses as a whip and just goes whoosh, and he like yells at them, and like he becomes a sort of domineering slave master type character that's like commanding this room, and everyone is like hiding from him and like putting their head in their hands, because whenever he starts to get all that energy, everyone else is like, oh no.
He's also
Yeah.
quite manic in those scenes.
Exactly,
he
yeah.
enjoys what he's doing.
Totally. And he can be like shaky, and he can like you can feel the energy in his performances, like his eye is twitching.
Yeah.
One of the scenes that really struck this kind of dichotomy and where this performance shines for me is in the middle of the movie-ish, where Caligula comes to Jan Erik and tries to make peace with him and tries to tell him, hey, like, don't look at me so
And
fearfully.
you're like, that's nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, the scene plays as nonsense to us because I think the film skillfully puts us in Jan Erik's shoes. He's our self-identification character. Like, we basically believe everything that he believes.
Yeah.
But it's not just the part where we were mistrustful of Caligula when he comes, but it's where Jan Erik kind of isn't buying this like nice guy vibe that Caligula's putting out, and he's like,
Well, why would you?
yeah, like,
just
why would
decided to
you?
be
This
nice
guy's
now.
evil, like literally just like categorically evil in this movie. And Caligula then goes like, you must see me this way. You like, he yells at him. But it's one line. He just like blows up, and then like he pulls it all back in, and there's just kind of this moment between their eyes that is like I think like Jan Erik, I think myself is confused about this man. He's very confusing character, like, and how I understand exactly how he is, but I have no clue how he got there, except this tiny little drip about him being ill. And so I think about the time period of the film. I think like, what is this coming from? Where is this context? And I think that
It's very possible they have some sort of psychological disorder or something.
Something like that. Or I'm going to put my headcanon in this basket case here and say that it's about there's some war elements in here that we are ostensibly in an interwar period. There's absolutely no mention of World War II in the film, but you have to imagine that World War I is on the minds of everybody. And at the end of the film, I think like the note that it lands on of well, you didn't graduate at school, but maybe that doesn't matter, I think is totally a note coming from the place of like being in World War II and the world changing so much and being such a totally different place that these.
You can imagine a lot of people his age at that time didn't graduate college, having a degree in more of a fine artsy kind of thing.
They have
wasn't
the GI
a
Bill in
priority.
Sweden. No, but
GI Jan.
Yeah. Anyway, very good. 2 comedy points. The mental aspect that I think Tucker brought up is like, it's very possible that he has a mental disorder. I think that's like basically explicitly stated in the film by the headmaster, who I keep referring to as that. I'm not sure what his character's name.
IMDb doesn't list him with other names other than the headmaster.
Anyway, he when he has his moment where he calls him into his office, he basically psychologically analyzes him. He's like,
it's a good moment.
He's like, listen, man, I can tell from the way that you conduct yourselves around them that you are afraid of them, and that you treat this exchange every day that you go in to teach them as if it is a battle of wits. You're engaging in psychological warfare with them, and because you are afraid of them, you feel the need to up the ante, sort of play up this persona, this manic persona, like Abram had pointed out, and make them more afraid of you than you are of them. And so that's basically exactly the headspace that he's in. And he obviously refutes that, and calls bullshit on that, of course. But that's pretty clearly what the dynamic is, especially given his relatively meek manner outside of those moments. You can kind of tell that he is not a man who of the utmost confidence, given the fact that he is picking on teenagers or helpless young women who are who run a shop or whatever.
Well, because we also never see him be aggressive. Well, I don't know if never is correct, but almost never see him be like aggressive or commandeering to people that aren't student age. When he's with other teachers or the police at the end, or I think he might interact with like a parent or something at some point. He's very like closed off and very strict to the point, but he doesn't let that energy out, and you can tell that it's because the power dynamic has shifted. He feels comfortable being aggressive and scary and rude to the students because it's in an enclosed space, and the students, it seems like, largely don't like go and tell anyone about this, and he can just get away with it. And you can see that facade completely disappear at the moment when the stakes come through. He, the headmaster chews him out and psychoanalyzes him, and just like kind of like grabs something and runs out of the room. He's like, I'm done. I
think
gotta go class.
it also falls apart towards the end of the film when Jan Erik's friend who does graduate calls him a swine.
Oh,
and you have that moment on his face where he's like, I have no clue what to say to that, because you can kind of tell that no one stands up to him because there is this understood thing sort of ingratiated by the proper education system that like your teachers are gonna be hard on you, and you just kind of got to take it. You just do your work and answer the questions, and if they're hard on you, oh well. That's that you're gonna graduate anyway. It's just do your work. And so you're taught not to stand up for yourself, and ultimately, I feel like that's kind of what Jan Erik learns, and maybe even transcends that to be like, this stuff isn't important, as sort of Timo was talking about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously we can talk more about Caligula, but we should also maybe talk about the main character of the film, Jan Erik.
Yeah. There's a repeated line in this film, and unfortunately it's not from Jan Erik, but it is when Bertha at the beginning is trying to keep Jan Erik at her apartment and is like, don't leave me alone, don't leave me. I find it very interesting that is mirrored. It is exactly replicated by Caligula at the end of the film in the same place. And Jan Erik stays with Bertha and he leaves Caligula after his character's transformation. And I'm just like, what is it about Jan Erik's character that makes him stay the first time and then leave the second time? What is his transformation? And I think it's in there. I think like the film totally does actually go in and discuss and kind of pull out. But that's kind of what I was thinking about and wondering during watching this. Like, why does he say yes the first time? And then what changes in him to say no the second time around?
Cute girl versus abusive teacher. Makes you feel like shit. No, but I honestly didn't really pick up on that. I think the scenarios are so different to where I would even struggle to call that, like, point to that as a part of the character arc.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are key moments for his character. I don't think you can necessarily track the parallel of one to the other and say, because of that change, that is the character arc. But as I was saying, the moment when he decides to stay with Bertha is kind of the moment you can see him softening as a character and being like, and being more available to helping others, because to that point he's been very shut off in class and very like, he doesn't seem to interact with many people other than his one buddy, Sandman.
Sandman.
Yes.
That's right.
Sandman.
And then at the end, of course, of the film, I think the most interesting thing about Jan Erik is the way that his personality plays with the scenario he's in of, who do I go to for help? Who can I trust in this situation? How much power do I have to say no to my parents, to say no to my teachers, to say no to Bertha? Eventually he does. I think the moment when he leaves Caligula at the end is more like, I have learned where my personality, it works best in certain scenarios, and I'm kind of spitballing there.
Here's what I would say. I think the reason you're spitballing is because I just don't think that Jan Erik has much to latch on to.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing about him is we get enough. We get the beats. He has this interest in music that is clearly not in alignment with what his parents are interested in for him. He has this sort of,
or the larger education system, it seems.
Yeah, he's got this outlook on romance and sex that is not shared by Sandman. He has this sort of feeling of intrinsic duty to some degree to help Bertha when he encounters her drunk on the staircase.
Yeah.
We know these things about him through action and through dialogue, but I feel that for as dire of a situation in some respects as Jan Erik is placed in, I just don't always really feel the stakes of what's unfolding around him.
I think you feel it more in the faces of both Bertha and that other classmate with the really big wide eyes.
Oh,
sure, scared of everything.
Yeah, that guy's got a very expressive face.
Pedersen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think with them you feel the stakes, but with Jan Erik is very stone-faced, kind of closed-off guy.
Yeah, I don't think the stoicism is an issue necessarily. I just think that what I sort of have a hard time with is when we end the film, and Tim, I think you're kind of alluding towards at least questions about how the film ends. I don't really understand how where Jan Erik ends kind of reflects where he began or the path he was taking along the way. Because if we have these ideas of him,
Maybe the real Torment was the friends who made along the way.
Sometimes it feels like it for me personally.
God, yeah.
if the
Tell me about it.
if the idea of Jan we have is this person who is of some strong moral character, of some at least high social position.
Mhm.
This is also a school of great privilege. It's a religious school. His family owns a big home. He has these particular views on romance, on art, on culture, and everything, on his future. Where necessarily does all of that square with where he goes? And like the fact that when he returns home at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning to find his father sort of disapproving, and his father leaves, like there are these notes of disapproval, maybe wanting approval. I don't know. I just kind of feel like there's a lot of traits and themes and threads for Jan Erik, but to me, they don't really actually tie into anything. They're just sort of all existent.
It does make the ending a little bit unsatisfactory to me because I feel like I don't actually know Jan Erik's character well enough from throughout the film. It's like I know the other characters very well, but I just don't know his well enough. I've been kind of mulling over a new reading of this movie while we've been talking here, and that is it's about old versus new. This is a generational movie, right? We've got older people and go butting heads really with the younger generation, and the younger generation wanting to kind of do their own thing. And I think about the parental interactions where Jan Erik and his parents are well, it's really his father are really butting head. His mother is actually pretty supportive of him, just isn't really allowed to say so in front of the dad. That to me is indicating a kind of a generational strife and a generational misunderstanding between the two groups that means that like they really won't ever be able to see eye to eye about what is important in life and how you should act. And mayhaps the older people, I think actually not mayhaps, the older people in this film are presented as being misguided and as being kind of wrong about their view on the world and how you should kind of enter into it as a new young person.
Except for the doctor, who I want to talk about, who sort of has this whole soliloquy on how on like the paradoxical or nature of school and how that's a little bit of dissonance, I guess, within society. But
is that kind of like the Albert Einstein guy who's kind of funny?
Yes, yeah. He but I do want to mention something that I feel is quite important for our understanding of Jan Erik as a character. So let's provide a little bit of context to this. This is the first.
All right, Mr. Research over here.
Well, this is just a little bit of cursory stuff. This is the first film that Ingmar Bergman ever wrote. He was 24 years old at the time. Now, what do we know about Jan Erik? Jan Erik is a young man who is interested in the arts and comes from a well-to-do family. He is interested in music.
Sounds like somebody
Ingmar Bergman, presumably at a young age, was interested in film. Ingmar Bergman, if we can recall a previous Quest film, The Best Intentions, also came from a very well-to-do family, or perhaps his parents weren't the most, approving or, emotionally available. Perhaps much like the parents that we see in this film. That's especially the father character is quite closed off. I don't know. Maybe I'm just grasping at straws here, but it seems to me quite obviously that Jan Erik is sort of a self-insert character for Ingmar Bergman, a 24-year-old, or probably younger when he wrote it, 24-year-old Ingmar Bergman, coming straight out of college, essentially, straight out of university. And I think a lot of those very young, very generationally gapped ideas that you were talking about, Timo, are almost overbearing in the film, I would say.
It's didactic. It just tells you what it thinks without any filter.
So at a certain point, I'm like, I know exactly what you're saying, and I can't exactly fault you for that, but,
It's like, I agree.
Exactly. So, a lot of the things like the doctor was saying that, we ask these young people to go to school all day and expect them to learn these things that really don't have any application outside of those, those academic contexts. And I couldn't help but watch that scene and think of the people who are like, well, why don't they teach us to do our taxes in school? Like, those you ever have those people in your
Yes.
classes or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like they should teach us life skills, and like they kind of do. You just maybe weren't paying attention in school. I don't know. Anyway, I think that Timo, didactic is a great word for it, and I think it
lots of characters
speaks
get the
very
chance
from the heart.
Mhm.
Maybe what the point is there.
Yeah, I mean,
From
I
a
think
young
it has
Bergman.
a very clear message about like schooling and how the
the
school
young
system
Yeah.
is kind of failing in Sweden, and how the students are unhappy and overworked to an unhealthy degree. I mean, that's a very we probably are a little too divorced from the time period to really like get that full message, but mayhaps there were some problems with the way that school systems were operating in 30s 40s Sweden, and that this is a more of a social issue film than we're really like kind of painting it to be. It could be.
I mean, it's not like these are necessarily period specific themes either. I
Mhm.
mean, you can even project a lot of this onto the American education system
Of
as
course.
it exists right now, and so I get that, and I get this
This
sort
happened to my buddy Jan Erik.
Very good.
two comedy point. Actually, I can't get them. Sorry.
Yeah.
How many do I get?
5. That's
Holy
5.
crap, yes!
I like the 5.
Yes!
I like that one a lot.
And I like the notion that this is a self-insert character
Yeah.
for Ingmar Bergman, but I just don't know if as an audience member that really works.
Sure,
I
no,
think
I-
it's sort of a situation where, I'm a little bit skeptical of inserting a character that is like 3 years younger than you, 4 years younger than you, to where like I don't necessarily know if there's that perspective to really derive
Yeah.
a lot from Jan Erik beyond, as I was sort of listing out these, I think, surface level traits that
Mhm.
are supposed to round him out. But I also just think that as a viewer, my attention is so enraptured in the dynamic between Jan Erik, Bertha, and Caligula that's really the plot level motion I'm paying
Yeah.
attention to, and where I'm trying to find a lot of the meaning. I kind of think, to you guys' point, what you've been raising, the ball is kind of hidden to a certain extent by this background family life. Obviously, the school is not backgrounded by any stretch of the imagination, but I just wonder if we can sort of apply this biographical reading, this social reading, if there's just a lot of readings in the film, and that might just suggest kind of material that isn't particularly pointed in any one way.
Well, I agree with you in that I don't feel that it's so focused on one clear idea that I'm able to take a specific thing or learning or theme away from it. But I do think that content-wise, this is a very simple, straightforward, and focused film.
Sure.
Like, we don't have a ton of side plots going on. It's basically only about the 3 core characters, and we say 3 core characters, but Bertha is definitely given a lot less screen time.
She's a supporting role for sure.
Yeah, than Caligula and Jan Erik. And the film is very morally black and white. There's not really any character that straddles a line between being overtly, as you were saying, Timo, presented as wrong in their beliefs or evil, or on the opposite side, either being oppressed or treated terribly, or having a moral sense of good, which Jan Erik doesn't. Even in the moments where Jan Erik has a little bit more conflict with what should he do or what does he feel comfortable in doing, it's like, okay, do I feel comfortable helping out this girl, or do I need to go home because it's curfew? Like, these aren't like, he's never really challenged in his moral view. He's challenged in his, oh, am I going to get in trouble for doing this point in his life? And so I think that like the Caligula stakes are very strong in the way that he is abusing and manipulating his students. And as I said, I think you especially see that in the faces and in some of the other performances of the other students in Jan Erik's class. But Jan Erik is more of a football between the real narrative of this film, which is, how is Bertha being abused? What happened to her? Who is doing this? I think that's the real story of Torment, because she's the one really being more explicitly tormented. And so he is kind of left to just be like this silent, he's obviously not a silent protagonist, but I see him in the way that I see like silent protagonists in video games, where he's like going from character to character that are actually telling us the story and trying to like piece things together. So he just kind of ends up being kind of a hollow center for this film to kind of orbit around, which I would think is why none of us are like glowing about anything about Jan Erik.
Well, here's my thing with it, because it's his film, like his sort of his strengthening of independence is the story of the movie.
I guess
that's what the
true.
movie's about.
It's what his character
Bertha
arc
thing
is.
The Bertha thing is like the largest and most complex plot element for sure, but the story of the film is Jan Erik's and is about his independence and becoming his own man, sort of maturing outside of the educational system, the path that is laid out for him by society, by his parents.
I think the reason I say the story is the Bertha being abused part is because I feel like it's really what I ended up watching the movie for.
Sure, fair.
Like I was like way more interested to get back to that. Yeah, I'm like, that's an interesting storyline.
I totally understand.
No, you're right. You're right.
But yeah, I mean, the main thing, I think it really comes to bear at the end, and we can talk about Bertha quickly before we wrap up. But my last note on sort of Jan Erik is this moment at the end when the graduation is happening, and the headmaster says, "This is a sign that you are fine, morally upstanding young man," and sort of reflectively you look back on the film and be like, no, Jan Erik has like a pretty strong moral compass throughout, and was standing up for kind of what he believed in, and is trying to do the right thing despite the fact that the odds were stacked against him in terms of the power dynamics, and didn't graduate. So clearly, like, this societal path is not what makes the mark of a morally upstanding young person.
And to lend credence to what you're saying, Tanner, even if you're looking at the educational element of the film as being omnipresent and sort of looking at the ways that it influences his independence, even the story with Bertha is intrinsically tied to the school system in that the tormentor is still Caligula. And the conversations with his parents largely are just about getting a demerit, getting expelled. And
I didn't do good on my homework or my test or whatever.
And so there is this sort of inescapable idea that you have Jan Erik unable to really get out of the structures that he's in, except at the very end when he even rejects the money from the headmaster to get a hotel, and he simply walks away with a cat. How effective you find that, I don't know. But I think ultimately, as to your point, Tucker, I agree with you that what's going on with Bertha is probably the most interesting part of the movie. And I guess I ultimately do wish we got more from her. I think that's my big criticism there.
I find a very interesting plot thread of, her alcoholism and her recovery, honestly, with Jan Erik, that it is shown that Jan Erik is a very good influence on her, and that when they're together, she is not drunk, and that when things go poorly, she relapses and goes back to using. And so I think that it's a very nice character note, and it's another, I guess, supporting element to be like, yes, Jan Erik he's a great guy. Like,
I think the Bertha storyline, as I said, is what's most interesting. But again, I will echo, I wish that we got more from Bertha specifically, because their romance is I think an element of the film that I found quite compelling, especially because, at least in the initial moments, it is unclear like what kind of pressure is being exerted to push a relationship to happen. But we also skip the beginning of their relationship. There's like a unclear amount of time gap, but a long enough period of time for them to feel very comfortable with one another and being like chilling in bed, probably post sex or whatever.
So what, a couple hours?
Yeah, a couple hours.
Post making it.
Yeah,
post making it.
Yes. But also it couldn't be that long of a time because this is all within before finals or whatever. So it was I guess their relationship just did happen very quickly, but because we never saw we saw their first date, which was him saving her from the street and all that.
Yeah.
But it's a very rushed beginning of the relationship, but I don't think it gets to the more interesting part of this, which of their relationship, which is Jan Erik trying to tease out of her what has caused you to have this kind of trauma and this kind of stress and anxiety about these things, and try to figure out what happened to her. And watching that dynamic play out, I think is pretty interesting, and where we get the most mystery of this film, and where I think that the sort of plot and dynamic level elements are at their strongest, is her hiding it and him trying to tease elements out of that and try to piece things together and figure out that mystery. And then the way that does quite obviously tie back into Caligula, but maybe I was just like thinking this movie was more complex than it actually is at the beginning. I thought there was a chance that it was someone else, that it was her father, that it was someone else that he knew, that Caligula would have ended up as kind of like a false front or red herring, I guess. But obviously everything does tie together, and that is narratively satisfying. But I found the mystery of that to be quite compelling, and I think it's where the best tension comes in and some of the best shot composition. I love the shot of the shadow of the hand, which I unintentionally ate in one of my short films.
That's true. So yeah, not exactly a red
Tanner's
herring.
really the Caligula of his day.
Well, I would not say that personally, but anyway, yeah, Caligula not so much a red herring, more just a red flag in the story. Yeah, I mean, I found Bertha, just quickly for my thoughts there, to be quite compelling. May Zetterling is the actress there. There's a lot of like pathos wrapped up in her character, that she sort of conveys this complex emotional person that doesn't exactly get delved into. Unfortunately, her story is cut tragically short by sort of Caligula showing back up in her life
in a very surprising death.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes quite suddenly and quite tragically.
It's so surprising that you get a really hilarious line from the doctors who go, "Who knew that you could drink yourself to death?"
Yeah, well, a little bit of 1940 showing through there. And I feel like perhaps in her character, a little bit of the time period showing through as well, because Jan Erik is this whole story about how he sort of breaks out of this oppressive nature of Caligula and gets to find his independence. And maybe we could have seen that coming to front a bit more in Bertha's character, rather than her being largely dependent on the moral compass that is Jan Erik.
Yeah.
It's time period stuff. It's also by nature of her needing to pass away tragically in the story. That she can't get a full character arc there. She does need to be the tragic figure that sort of pushes Jan Erik beyond past the point of no return, essentially, in his arc.
Yeah, I mean, the trope of a woman dying to further a man's character arc
didn't start here and wouldn't end for full, ongoing.
Probably
yet to end.
But I think even by merit of that often misogynist trope, when executed properly, you at least, I think, have a rounder understanding of the woman who ends up getting killed.
Yeah, and a lot of that's performance too. And like I said, I really like May Zetterling's performance in this.
And I think it's a good performance, but I just think that we don't have a round enough picture of her for even this bad trope to work very efficiently.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
Want to give this game a game? Oh, God.
Gore?
Want to give a movie a score?
Movie score.
I suppose so.
We got to wrap
Movie
it up
score.
here. We've got some appointments later on. What am I going to give it? Oh, I think I'll give it that. Maybe a little higher. No. We're going to keep it with the first thought. You guys ready? 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Oh my God, we have.
That's really close.
Well,
Ooh, we have a tie.
we have a bit of a tie, or maybe not a bit of a tie. I think we are allowed to decide if we.
No, I think we should just put it below.
Yeah, let's put it below.
Intriguingly, Timo, what did it get?
Yeah.
It got a 6.4, but technically it got a 6.35, and so we're going to go with that. The point breakdown is I gave it a 5.5, Tanner gave it a 6.3, Abram gave it a 6.5, and Tucker gave it a 7.1. So there you have it. And it seems like none of us are in the mood to litigate this evening, so let's just
say it's a 6.35 and it ends up there.
It is 6.3.
It is 6.35.
Yeah, I'm saying that.
It's going to go
let's just say it.
at below blue is the warmest color at spot number 14.
Nice.
And if we had rounded up, it would have been in the same tie scenario as last week.
Yes, which is why we're like, let's not even bother.
Can of worms.
And also because it's way less. It's way less possible that someone saw this, or less likely that someone saw this and blue is the warmest color.
I also don't think would we be split. So I'm gonna get into it.
No, don't even worry about it.
All right.
Spin that wheel, funky white boy.
Woo!
Tanner, you ready?
One more time. Torment. Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital or is it on real? Wheel, what's your deal?
Wow, you are sped through that one. The number is 65.
And the wheel's deal.
Mhm.
65 will bring us much closer to the present than this past film does. We are going to get a film from Lars von Trier, the
Classic guy.
2000. The year 2000.
The far-flung
winner.
year, 2000.
Yeah. The winner from the year 2000 with a 4.2 in Letterboxd and starring Bjork, Catherine Deneuve,
Like Bjork?
Yeah,
Peter
Bjork.
Stormare,
Yep.
David Morse, Kara Seymour. This is Dancer in the Dark.
Yes.
Is this a fucked up Lars von Trier?
Oh, buddy.
Selma, a Czech immigrant on the verge of blindness, struggles to make ends meet for herself and her son, who has inherited the same genetic disorder and will suffer the same fate without an expensive operation. When life gets too difficult, Selma learns to cope through her love of musicals, escaping life's troubles, even if just for a moment, by dreaming up little numbers to the rhythmic beats of her surroundings.
Doesn't sound too.
Well, it's not like in nature fucked up. I guess just quite dour and sad and
No,
depressing.
but it's not like the house that Jack built. or
No.
whatever it is.
We're not dealing
Or the
with
one where
dicing
Willem
up.
Dafoe's penis gets cut off.
Yeah, we're not dealing with dicing up bodies or blood coming out of male sex organs or anything like that.
We instead,
No,
Not tonight.
we instead
Not tonight.
get to deal with Bjork. And I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah,
I like
Bjork.
Bjork, so I'm looking forward to it.
What about blind Bjork?
Blind
Yeah,
Bjork.
5 times fast.
Yeah.
Blind Bjork, blind blind.
Say that 5 times fast in the comments. See if we can do it.
Thank you guys for talking
Yes.
about Torment, Hets, as it's
Torment.
called in the old Swedish. Next time, we're going to be talking about Mr. Lars von Trier and his film Dancer in the Dark. Stay tuned right here to Backlot Banter for more movie discussion reviews, all that kind of good stuff. And you know what I say. Stay cool, keep warm, peace.